town of Cocham looks like a place frozen in time, except for the buses and cars. Cocham looks much like it did in the late Middle Ages. A castle still sits high above the village, affording commanding views of the valley below. This is not the original castle. The previous one was left in ruins after invading troops of French King Louis XIV set fire to the castle. After the French left, the castle was eventually rebuilt as a home for a wealthy businessman. He added iron cannons and funny-looking stone statues to recreate the feeling of medieval times. The only part of the original castle is this tower, the Witch's Tower. It has a dark name and an even darker history. Here was where women charged with witchcraft faced a simple but awful trial. The accused were thrown out of the tower's high window. It was believed only a witch could survive the fall. So, if she did survive, that proved she was guilty, and she was then executed. However, if she died in the fall, she was declared innocent. Innocent, but dead. Guess they were called the Dark Ages for a reason. Look carefully, and you can see that the town was once surrounded by high walls. Most of the walls are long gone, but 3 huge gates, like this one, still stand. They give you an idea of just how massive those walls must have been. Cocham was, and still is, a thriving town, because a river runs through it. Called the Moselle, it winds its way from France through Luxembourg and into western Germany. A favorite tourist attraction is to take a short cruise while listening to the pre-recorded tour guide.
The Moselle rises in the Vosges and 545 kilometers later flows into the Rhine at Koblenz.
Along the river, you'll gently glide past the pastel-painted buildings, the many open green areas, as well as the scenic bike paths. The recorded tour guide explains that this area is famous for growing wine.
The innumerable vineyards are the predominant feature of the Moselle landscape. 2,000 years ago, the Romans brought wine to the Moselle.
This valley is so peaceful, it's hard to think that it played a vital role during the Cold War. No sooner had World War II ended than a new conflict began, the Cold War. This was between the world's 2 superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. The term Cold War came from an essay written by George Orwell. He's far more famous for writing 2 books many of us read in school, Animal Farm and 1984. Orwell called the conflict a Cold War because while there was lots of tension, angry words and spying, there was very little fighting. But it was still a very dangerous time. In the 1950s and early 60s, the world lived in fear that a terrible new war would break out. A nuclear war. Countries made all kinds of plans in case that happened. In America, some people built bomb shelters in their basements or backyards, stocking them with food and supplies. And kids were taught what to do if there's an attack.
There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He'd duck and cover, duck and cover.
We can laugh at this cartoon today, but back in the 1950s, people were worried that the Cold War could suddenly become a nuclear war. And films like these were made to tell the public what to do.
First, you duck, and then you cover. It's a bomb. Duck and cover. Paul and Patty know what to do.
People in Europe were even more concerned because they lived much closer to the Soviet Union than we do. And that brings us back to the peaceful and pretty town of Cocham. The West German government worried that if there were a nuclear war, how would they be able to keep the country's economy running? So they wanted a safe place to store billions of German dollars, called marks. Nestled in a deep valley and protected by high hills, Cocham seemed a pretty safe place. But where to keep all that money? They decided to bury it in a vault 90 feet underground. And they built these two ordinary-looking houses to hide the stash of cash. For years, none of the Cocham residents knew that they were living right next to billions and billions of dollars. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved and the Cold War ended. The hidden money was removed. The vault is now an underground museum, and the fake houses that hid it for decades have been turned into a hotel. Guess if you want to check out this story, all you have to do is check into the hotel. I'm Ava for Teen Kids News.